Hi, thank you for coming. And I'm excited to share with you some of the ways in which I, along with my team, practice integrative mental health protocols and how that can help in a more practical way for our patients. I think a lot of people don't come to treatment because we're not providing them with the solutions that they need and the repair work that they need. So I'm Shari Kaplan. I've done integrative mental health in both New York City and Florida for the past 30 years. I currently work at Cannectd Wellness, which is my center in Boca Raton, Florida. I work there with Dr. Weiner and our team. Several people are here, Janelle, Anna Margaret, Nurse Jessica, who's not here right now, and some of our nurses, Alessandra and Sandra. And so we're all here supporting each other as well. So the type of work that I have done in the past has been with a lot of people who have been victims of trauma and chronic and traumatic stress. I've worked with a lot of people with neurodevelopmental disorders, schizophrenia, bipolar disorders, a lot of autism and Down syndrome. I've worked with athletes to help them overcome performance anxiety. I'm just trying to give you a little bit of my scope of patients that I've treated. A lot of children and families who had HIV and AIDS and cancer in the LGBT community as well with HIV and AIDS. So I'm speaking to you from a place of not only treating many people with various different chronic pains and mental health disorders, but I also experienced my own trauma when my children at the ages of 2 and 4 were the victims of a very horrific crime, and they were assaulted and nearly killed, which forced me into creating trauma treatment protocols for them to help get their bodies and minds heal. And when I tell you that it is a mind-body healing that we need to focus on, that is where trauma lives. And I'm sure many of you know that in the cells of our body as well as in our experiences in our minds. So having said that, I would like to share with you some of the protocols that we use, but most importantly, start from the beginning, which are the fundamental concepts that I built my programs around and that we use today in our treatment, our ketamine-assisted therapy treatment, which we do with our team. So here we go. Here are some of the fundamental aspects that we work off of. I'm going to break them down for you very simply, but I just want to mention them. You know, the first is that our bodies self-correct and self-heal. This is something that doctors learn their first days in medical school. It's something that we know. We cut ourselves, we heal, and yet we don't use this as the foundation of how we actually go to find the root cause and help people heal. So that's one of our basic foundations. The other one is that we need to look at people not just from are they having anxiety or pain, but who they are from the time that they are born to the time they walk into your office. And what have they experienced, what's going on environmentally in their body, as well as what they've experienced in life. And that includes how they process information, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. I do work from a strengths perspective, resiliency enhancement model. I think most clinicians, when we were trained, was to assess what's not working. Well, there's a lot that is working, and people have survived and overcome and made it to your office or made it to your program, and that is so important that we know each and every one of those strengths and positive beliefs that they have about themselves that help them to get there, because we want to use that as a way of helping them to repair what needs to be repaired and move forward. We use a lot of integrative modalities, and I don't think it's enough to just say breathe and meditate and do mindfulness and here's your nutrition plan. There's actually a process, and there's a focused process. I always say we live in an organized universe, and everything needs order. It doesn't need rigidity. We need that cognitive flexibility, but we need to have a plan and a process. So I would like to share with you how you might go about putting that together, and I hope you'll join me tomorrow at 10 o'clock in the morning for a workshop if you're a clinician or a coach and you'd like to learn more about how to pull it all together. I'll be doing that tomorrow at 10 o'clock. So the other thing that I just want to touch on ever so briefly is that AI has entered the world of mental health, and I just want to talk about that real briefly. Matter of fact, I call it the pink elephant in the room, and when I talk to other clinicians, certainly my age, they're all worried about how AI can replace us. AI cannot replace us, but we could use it very wisely. So AI has been studied to be able to predict if you have certain types of behaviors, certain types of background in your history, they might be able to predict with quite a bit of accuracy that you may develop these types of symptoms or mental health disorders. So what's wrong with that? Well, who are the people who currently show up for mental health treatment? Not a very culturally diverse population. So if you don't have a good culturally diverse population, you cannot collect the right data that we need to help people from all different cultures. So even though it can be helpful, you still, diagnosing is a very subjective experience. So if you are not meeting with a person, listening to the person, collect the data. That's great. But then really see where the loopholes are. So there are a lot of diagnosing gaps when it comes to using AI solely. So we need to work those things out, and I think it takes a human to be present to do that. So one of the ways that AI, I think, is going to be really helpful is ensuring compliance to treatment programs. Right? So when you create a treatment protocol and we say, okay, I'm going to try exercising this amount of days and doing this and my breath work and my meditation and I'm going to use these skills and tools, we can actually track that. And that can be helpful in knowing what is working, what isn't working. It's not always take a higher dose of your medicine. Sometimes it's something else that's going on. And having AI to be able to give us and keep track of that could be a helpful tool as we move forward. And chatbots are currently being used. They make me a little nervous, but we are assured that once somebody hits a certain languaging in the chatbot, they immediately have a referral link that it goes to. I don't know, that's a little scary to me, but I know that it's working for the people who are studying it. I'd be more than happy to share that study with anybody a little bit later. And then the other thing that I think AI falls short on is we know that it takes another human to circuit a human. And when you have attachment wounds from early childhood, it takes another human to help you correct it. So we will never be replaced because we do need each other to thrive and heal. So I just wanted to point that out because I think AI is definitely entering the world of mental health and we want to be able to use it well. Having said that, let's go back to the body that self-corrects and self-heals. So our body self-corrects and self-heals when we get it back into homeostasis. And we have a whole conference right now of different people sharing different types of technology and ways to get your body back into homeostasis. And that should be included as part of a treatment program because we want to get our patients into that homeostasis state as often as possible so that the work that you're doing has an opportunity to modulate in the body. So I'm also going to talk about those treatments in a little while as well. We want to get to the root cause. And the root cause a lot of times happened in utero. Sometimes we were born in a mother's stomach who was under tremendous stress, or they themselves had a mental illness and it was chronic stress. So there are stress hormones just being showered upon that fetus as it's growing. And then I'll meet people later on in life and they'll say, I had a loving mother, everything was wonderful. But that doesn't mean that you didn't have an anxious mother. And that doesn't mean that that attachment to your mother is not also anxious or insecure. And so it's important that we look at how we are attached so that we can repair that. And that does take another human to do with you. Treating symptoms, really important. We have patients who come to us sometimes with very severe obsessive thinking. And sometimes you can't get out ahead of it, and we will try cannabis, and we'll try other plant medicines and psychedelic-assisted therapy using ketamine. And sometimes you can't get out ahead of that obsessive thinking. And that's when we need pharmaceutical medications. Because sometimes if you can get somebody on a pharmaceutical medication, then it quiets them down enough so that you can then do the work. And then you can use these other plant medicines and cannabis and psychedelic-assisted therapies to then help in the transformation, in the awareness process, and in also having that neuroplasticity so people can affect change and move forward with different beliefs than what they had originally. So the mind-body assessment, I think, is very important. And it's important that we do the whole assessment and not just one piece. Currently, right now, you go to a psychologist or a psychiatrist, and they're going to ask you what medications you're on, but you're going to pretty much get a psychosocial assessment. And what's really important is that if we understand that we have hundreds of trillions of living organisms in our body, and hundreds of trillions of cells. And those organisms and those cells are eavesdropping on every thought we're having and every belief. And the cells remember our past experiences, then we really have to get a handle on what somebody actually says to themselves. And I think that takes a little bit more diving and detailing in our attachments and our relationships. So it's really important to understand what environment we're in. If you're in an abusive relationship and you're going for help, we have to make sure that body can get out of fight or flight before you can mobilize their strengths to be able to take care of themselves or help that relationship repair if possible. So the thorough biosocial starts from where was your mother when you were in utero? And was she under stress? We go through an entire process of any complications during labor and delivery, your childhood development, any major illnesses, injuries, or experiences that you've had from birth to now. We look at what type of toddler you were, sensory processing. Did someone have processing problems? Do they learn better through visual? Is it visual, auditory, other senses? Some people are multi-sensory learners. So it makes it very difficult to pick a treatment protocol if we don't understand the way that somebody processes information in their environment. So that's why it's very important that we understand what's going on for them neurologically, developmentally, medically, because obviously your medical condition can also affect your mental health condition. So we want it to be thorough and really conclusive of both what's going on for our mind, body, and soul. And I think one of the things when I was in New York City back in the early 90s, and I went for clinical supervision at one of the agencies that I was at, I shared with them that I do an assessment on somebody's spiritual beliefs and how they actually use those beliefs in their day-to-day life. And she said to me, you know, Menninger's has one study out on how important spirituality is in your mental health, and that was it. There was nothing else. And I said, well, I don't know how I would function in my life if I hadn't been meditating since I was 11, if I didn't believe that I had a way of tapping into the intelligence in whatever life force we have. And so from that moment on, it was always so important to me to make sure that I understood what did people believe and what didn't they believe? How was it helpful and how was it harmful? So that's also a part of our mind-body assessment as well. And I don't want to just repeat myself, but your whole body, your whole self lived that narrative. And in order to heal, you have to release it from the whole body. It is not just a conversation. It is a conversation with a lot of music and movement and other modalities. All right, so here are the different types of treatment protocols that I have found to be very helpful and the different ways in which we help people in our practice. So to me, cognitive behavioral therapy is just kind of like saying, I woke up in the morning and I took a breath, right? So that's like the basis of all therapy. But if you want to get into repair work, we need to be able to use different modalities that get us back into our timeline so that we can repair either the ego states, which are like the little individuals that you were growing up until today, or the different roles that we play. So in ego state psychology, it's more, I always say it's more of a divine feminine energy process where you're nurturing and you're reparenting a child, whereas with internal family systems, I think that's more of a very masculine way of viewing ourselves, which is we identify our roles. Not, I have been practicing integrative mental health for 30 years, but I am an integrative mental health clinician. So I think we relate, again, based on our processing and our learning styles, we relate more to this is my identity, I am a manager, I am a crisis intervention person. So our different roles, or sometimes it's easier to relate to that 12-year-old who was home alone for hours and hours and doesn't feel safe and is scared and might need our attention and our love and nurturing and need that kind of repair. So there's all different ways of addressing people's traumas and doing repair work. There are over 300 kinds of therapy out there. And some of them are physical and some of them are more talk therapy. So you really have to find the one with your clinician that's going to suit you best. So also music and movement, we are sound frequencies. We need to move our bodies. We need to release it with music. That does help tremendously, along with things like acupuncture and energy work. Just to go through it, my concept of self-care are massages, facials. I don't care if you do them in a soup pot in your kitchen. If you are taking care of yourself and you're nurturing yourself, best to do it with another person because that connection means a lot. Meditation, mindfulness, and breath work. We need to stay present to heal. And I think that is the big ticket, is we're trying to get people to be in this present moment. So when people say, I was triggered, meaning I was taken back to an earlier time in my life and an earlier experience, and I am no longer in my body right now. So we need to be able to find safe places in people's bodies and get them to be able to self-regulate and manage their stress response, their fight or flight response. Creative journaling. Nutrition is a big one to me because so much happens in the gut. Our endocannabinoid system, that system that modulates every other system in our body, starts in our gut. So imagine you are in fight or flight. You are releasing acid to get all that food broken down. Your stomach is churning, and it's trying to release it so that you have energy to go run after that lion or run away from it. And so that in and of itself, all the sugar that you need in order for that fight, your body craves sugar. Your gut becomes an acidic environment if you live there day after day. And in that acidic environment, and I know we have one of our dietitians, Jillian, is here today, and she's talking in the next couple days. But when you have an acidic environment, fungus can grow, bacteria can grow. It's the perfect environment that can no longer allow you to produce the right serotonin, to produce the right cannabinoids that you need. And if you cannot produce the right endocannabinoids, you cannot produce endorphins. So we'll get back to that when we talk about cannabis. Our relationships, our social connections, a lot of those need repair and they need enhancement. Our connection to nature, we are nature. Whatever lives in our environment lives inside of us on some level, right? We have all of the gut flora, the microbiomes. So it's really important that we stay connected, get connected and stay connected, because it helps us to thrive. Functional spirituality, I already mentioned to you. Time management and money management, not something that most mental health clinicians think about, but you really need order in order to be able to be flexible within your life. You need to be able to create some very concrete aspects of order. Being of service and volunteering, I just always think that once you get to the place that you want to be in, giving back, or just even on your healing, being able to go to a soup kitchen, being able to sit down at a Starbucks and seeing someone who doesn't seem quite right and smiling and saying good morning. It doesn't always have to be a formal way of putting things out there. Sleep, need I say more? 7 hours, which I don't think I got last night. Fun. Well, my team would have a lot to say about how much fun I have, and it's not enough. But I do believe in planning for fun when I'm making a treatment plan for somebody. You need to be able to look ahead and say, what are you doing this weekend? You know, how can we build something in there? Because it is an important part of our mental health. I happen to think this is fun, though. I think this is fun. Okay. And plant medicine, cannabis, and psychedelic medicine. We have a plethora of plants to choose from. We have so many different types of psychedelics, and they don't only circuit our bodies and give us neuroplasticity and give us the ability to prune the neural networks that are causing us problems, but they give us an opportunity to shift some of our biochemistry as well. And I'll talk about that in just a moment. So when do we use ketamine, cannabis, and psychedelics? Well, cannabis works on what I just mentioned, which is the system in our body that modulates every other system, your cardiovascular system, your circulatory system. Every system gets modulated through the endocannabinoid system. And that is the system that cannabis works on, and that's the system that all plants work on in our body. So when we have a system that gets taxed by having too much stress, it's called an endocannabinoid tone. We want to be able to support that system by adding to it plants and cannabis to help recalibrate it, to get it up and running so that we can have better sleep, so we can rest and digest, so we can relieve ourselves of pain. So we can decrease our anxiety, we can regulate seizures. So these are all the areas that plants have been studied and are continuing to be studied so that we can form formulations that can be studied and have something more effective to help balance people's bodies instead of having to take something that is part helpful and part harmful. Microdosing various different types of plants and cannabis can be so helpful, and we need to be studying that more and more so that we can come up with really consistent treatment protocols using that. Ketamine, I always say from a psychiatric point of view, if you're looking at this from how do we affect someone's mental health, glutamate, GABA, oxytocin, dopamine, we wonder how we get patients out of depression and PTSD using ketamine. It takes a team, it takes good medicine, it takes focused treatment, and ketamine has been extremely helpful in doing that. However, some people need more serotonin boosts. Their serotonin receptors might not be working well. And as we continue to study this area more and more, I think we'll be able to see how we can use plants like fungus like psilocybin along with ketamine and other things like MDMA and other psychedelics that can actually balance out our hormones that affect our mental health. And then we can use cannabis to modulate the system. And so I think that this is an area that we need further research on, but I think is a really important area that we don't just think about. Psychedelics can expand our awareness and help us treat areas of our lives that maybe we haven't been able to reach just in talk therapy alone. It gives us the neuroplasticity to be able to help affect change more quickly. But we also have a way that we haven't been working with so much yet, which is how can we use it pharmacologically to help affect change for patients who need to be on medication for a period of time. And I'd like to see more of that happen. So how do we pull this all together? I probably should have switched these two around, because the Therapeutic Alliance is so important and really needs a lot of attention that I could speak for hours about building a therapeutic alliance. I have been very fortunate to be connected to the team that I am a part of and have been brought into and get to work with. But our patients are really the ones that get the value from that. I think we do as well. When we create a therapeutic alliance, it is the patient, it is the doctor, it's the therapist, it's the coaches, it's the experts in all the different areas of integrative health that come together, that communicate, and that are there for the patient, and the patient knows that each of us gets together as a team and is on top of where they are in their treatment. And that is so empowering for them, that they get to say, this doesn't work for me, I think I want to try something else, and that we will all get together and figure out what that something else is. So that therapeutic alliance, to me, is such an important and invaluable way of treating patients. No one should be treating, like, we have psychiatrists who we get patients from, and they've never been in therapy, but they've been on medication for 10 years. Like, that's just mind-blowing to me. Like, to me, that's practicing without a net. Like, we want to help people heal. So that's that. How do you build a plan? Well, what's important about a plan is understanding that we need to move the body and the mind. We need to help them in their process. And so if you understand that somebody has an auditory processing disorder, which is one of the most common processing disorders that happen from trauma, Bessel van der Kolk wrote about it years and years ago when he started out writing, working with Vietnam vets and writing the post-traumatic stress disorder diagnosis. So if you have an auditory processing problem, we have a problem decoding, organizing, and sequencing information that you hear. That means being able to identify what something is. Your brain has to be able to decode it, organize it, and sequence it to give it a meaning. And when you have trauma, your eyes and your ears and your senses do not coordinate that because of what happens neurobiologically in trauma. So we need to really work on our music and our movement and our breath and be able to get all of that flowing as we are doing work. So my favorite way of building a plan is we move the body and we talk. And then we use modalities to help us release trauma visually, somatically, and then we go back to the music and the movement. We use some acupuncture, we talk, and there is an ebb and flow between talking and moving, whether it's visually, physically, using movements, sound bowl healings, but I want people to think in terms of you move and you talk. You get awareness from psychedelics, and you talk and you move. And there is an ebb and flow to that, and I'd like to see us study that a little bit more. And I want to remind people in my last 1 minute and 7 seconds that if you're here and you're a clinician, if you're here and you're here to learn more, I am very big in evidence-based work. But it takes people like us who have the courage to responsibly use protocols and medicines in a way that is reasonable and helpful. And that's how we get to the point where we get to study them and get the evidence-based studies. So to all of us who are here, you are badasses for having the strength and the courage and the perseverance to put these protocols together and help the people who are struggling, and we all need each other, and I hope that we use today and every day to focus and connect and be deliberate with our intentions so that we can have a more peaceful and just society. Thank you.